What is going on, everyone? This is Zach from Clutch Crew Sports, back with another 2022 college football conference preview video. And on today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the ACC Coastal Division. You can check out my last video on the ACC Atlantic Division. I ranked those 7 teams. Now we're going to focus on the Coastal Division, which admittedly is definitely weaker than the Atlantic in most people's eyes, especially the top talent. There's a lot. It seems like the Atlantic's got better teams than the Coastal does. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna go ahead and rank the 7 Coastal teams in the ACC. So starting off with number 7, to nobody's surprise, really, is going to be Duke University, the Duke Blue Devils. They come in at 7 on my rankings, and it's just they have a brutal schedule. It's going to be hard for me to see them getting many wins, especially in the conference. They have a possible winnable game against Virginia early in the season in October. I think that's the kickoff of their ACC schedule. That to me is a big game for them. It's going to be at home. There's a little bit of a rivalry between Duke and Virginia, 2 academic schools. That's one where I'd pick Virginia to win, but Duke, they're going to be wanting to win that. And then against Georgia Tech the next week is another possible winnable game. But the end of the year gets real difficult with Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, Miami, later in the year. Last year they were 0-8 in the conference, 3-9 overall. They started out well, got some easy, cupcake wins, but 0-8 in the conference, not good at all. And out of these 7 teams, they're 6th in the experience rank. They're really struggling to bring back players. I think it's only 11 starters. So pretty much they're rocking half a new starting lineup on both sides of the ball. And this is a rebuilding year. They're bringing in new head coach Mike Elko from Texas A&M, a defensive-minded guy. I think he's going to possibly be a good coach for him, but this year is his first year, and not a lot's being asked of him. And in all honesty, this team isn't expected to do well. They're on a 13-game ACC losing streak, so they haven't won a conference game in like 2 years. 0-8 last year. It's just been a rough time for Duke football. So honestly, any wins in the conference would be a step up from what it's been. And they lost. This is what makes it difficult, though, I think, and why they're going to easily finish 7th. They lost their starting quarterback, their best running back, and their best receiver all, in the offseason. So there's just not any talent at all on the offensive side. And this is why the first time, probably the only time ever, I'm going to pick their key player as Porter Wilson, the punter for Duke. I could have, gone with one of their running backs or receivers, but this guy's been with Duke, and he is a really good punter. And I will say Duke has a real good special teams unit in general. Kickoff return for touchdowns, blocked punts. Porter Wilson, his net was 41 yards a punt. So, Duke has good special teams, and that's important. People laugh and stuff, but special teams kicking can win or lose you games. It's a big deal being able to flip the field. Duke's not going to have a great offense, so having a good punter is actually going to be really solid for them. Next up at number 6 on my rankings, I've got Georgia Tech. Another sort of rebuilding situation I'll get to, but brutal schedule. They draw Clemson from the Atlantic to start the year. They play Ole Miss, and they play UCF, and then at the end of the year they play Georgia. I mean, that's Western Carolina is the only game on the schedule that's considered easy. And then Duke, obviously, they play at home. That should be one where Georgia Tech may get 2 wins this year, and one of them might be against Duke. So unless they get some upsets, like last year they were 2-6 in the conference, 3-9 overall. Georgia Tech is one of those teams that is good for an upset every other year. They could beat somebody that they're not supposed to. But man, the end of October there through the end of November, when you just have one home game against Miami, and that's Miami, at Florida State, at Virginia Tech, at North Carolina, at Duke. I mean, I don't know who made the schedule here for Georgia Tech, but it is absolutely brutal. So they're also bad as far as bringing back players. They're ranked 7th out of these 7 teams. Bringing back players, only 8 returning starters out of the 22 possible. So definitely going to be a very new team. It's not like they were good last year, obviously, but it's not looking like they're going to be good this year either. Like I mentioned in that schedule, very, very tough schedule. Wins are going to be hard to come by. And this is a team that's still undergoing that transformation of an offense, being the option offense that they had for so long. Now they've adjusted to the spread offense, but that's still taking some time. It's going to take a few more years, honestly, until I think Georgia Tech gets to a point where they want to be with that new offense. But their key player is going to be Jeff Sims. He's a dual threat quarterback, guy that can run the ball and pass pretty well. But he's coming back. That's a bright spot for him. Not that he's on a watch list or anything like that. But at least they do have the quarterback returning for Georgia Tech. Next up, I've got Virginia at 5th in the conference. Their key game, I've got penciled in at Virginia Tech. Could be the difference maker between them and Virginia Tech for the season. This is like my next tier. So those Georgia Tech and Duke are in the bottom tier. This is the next tier, starting with Virginia. And, they play Richmond to start the year, at Illinois. Who do they play out of the Atlantic? Let's see, Louisville and Syracuse. So not terrible, especially Syracuse. But still, I don't think they're going to have a great year. They're going to be kind of average like last year, 4-4 and 6-6 overall. That's as average as it gets. However, this is sort of a rebuilding team, 5th out of 7 in experience. So they are losing a lot of players from last year's 2021 team. And speaking of 2021, they got very lucky if you look at their schedule. 2 of their wins in the ACC were caused by teams missing game-winning field goals. So, that's one of those things that if those 2 kicks go in, then they look even worse than they did last year, which wasn't great to begin with. But they do have a new head coach, Tony Elliott from Clemson, who I really like, actually. I think getting a guy from within the conference, who's been on that successful Clemson team, I think is a real good idea. I think Tony Elliott's going to be a good coach for Virginia, actually. However, this defense was really bad last year. If you look at the box scores, they gave up a lot of points, not many good players on defense, and their offensive line's completely depleted, losing all 5 starters from last year. The offensive line's going to be a major, I think, weakness. At the very best, it's a question because we don't know. We've never seen these 5 guys before, but this is a rebuilding team. Because that offensive line's so shaky, I think they finished 5th. Quarterback Brennan Armstrong was coming off a pretty good 2021. He'll give Tony Elliott a decent quarterback to start his career at Virginia with. Obviously, you can always upgrade from a guy like that, but to start off year 1, not a bad quarterback for a rookie head coach. And next up, I've got Virginia Tech at 4th, right there with their rival Virginia, which coincidentally, is their key game for both teams, is that November 26th game against each other. They get them at home, which is honestly why I put Virginia Tech ahead of Virginia. I think these teams are neck and neck. It was tough for me to decide who would finish ahead of the other, but getting that game at home, I think, is big. They did beat them last year, but Virginia Tech, let's see, out of the Atlantic, they're drawing NC State and Boston College. So, not terrible. Boston College, they should be able to beat. But still, it's a tough schedule when you got to go at North Carolina and at Pittsburgh, at NC State. But they do get Virginia at home. Last year they were 4-4, 6-7 overall. So very, very similar to Virginia. They did beat Virginia head to head last year. And out of these teams, they rank 4th out of 7. So if you've been paying attention, the top 3 teams in the experience rank are actually the top 3 that I've got ranked in this division. But so out of these teams, they're about in the middle. Brent Pry is a rookie head coach, never been a head coach before in college football. He is going to be asked the tall test of rebuilding this team this year. So there's not high expectations. Virginia Tech's not predicted to win this by anybody probably. And as usual, Virginia Tech is a defensive-led team, as they will be this year as well. In my opinion, the defense is the strength of this team. Home field advantage is a huge thing for this team. I think this team plays a lot better at home. So it's possible some of these home games they get upsets in tougher games. But their key player, Alan Tisdale, is the weak side linebacker, leads a great linebacking unit. The best unit for this team is their linebackers. So, like I said, defense is how Virginia Tech is going to win games. It's still, I think, going to be a rough season for them overall, but I do have them finishing 4th. At number 3 now, this is where some people might be going, whoa, Pittsburgh at number 3? They won this last year. They were 7-1 in the conference, 11-3 overall, got that bowl win against Michigan State. Their head coach is saying they could win the Big Ten, but yeah, I've got them 3rd in this division. To me, they just lost too much. I'll get to that in a second, but I think one of the key games that could decide this division is that November 26th end of the year game at Miami. That's their key game for sure. I think Miami beat them last year. It was one of their few losses, but they got to go on the road and try and beat Miami. I think is going to go a long way in deciding the conference, the division. Out of these teams that were second in bringing back talent, which actually, surprised me when, considering they lost Kenny Pickett, they lost Jordan Addison, the receiver, to USC. So they lost, Heisman level players. But it's still a good team. They still are bringing a lot of people back. The big question marks at quarterback. This was a team during the Kenny Pickett era that liked to throw the ball a lot. They had a good O-line, and they were a throw-first team. However, this year, I think they're going to get back sort of to their roots, Pittsburgh's roots, and being a more run-first team, which they are bringing a lot of their running backs back, which I think is a real good thing. Speaking of Israel Abanikanda, I don't know how to say that name, but he could be a breakout star from what I'm seeing. Had a great year last year, but with Pitt changing their offense, I think he's going to be even more of a focus for teams to stop. The quarterback is too big of a question mark for me to rank them higher. We just don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty at quarterback actually in this division, which makes it very winnable for the team I think that will win it. But they do have a good D-line. Like I said, Pitt'll be a good team. I just don't think they're going to be nearly as good as they were last year with Kenny Pickett. There's definitely going to be a down drop when you lose a guy like that. And that's why I think they'll finish 3rd. Now at 2nd, I've got North Carolina. They were 3-5 in the conference last year, 6-7 overall. Obviously, they were a top preseason top 10 team. A lot of people picking them to like win the ACC and stuff, and it just did not work out for them. They just started off slow. They had some bad losses, and then not good at the end of the year either, losing that Notre Dame game. But with that being said, guys, I think their key game is going to be at Miami on October 8th. I think that's obviously the Pitt game will be big as well, but they got to go at Miami. Out of the Atlantic, they're drawing, let's see here, Wake Forest, who's pretty good, and NC State. So obviously playing all the North Carolina teams here. Those are some tough games out of the Atlantic, which is why I think they're going to finish second. But I do think it's a pretty good team. That's why I got them second. Out of these teams are ranked third out of 7 with bringing back players. Similar to Pitt, it's going to be unproven quarterback play after Sam Howell has gotten drafted to the NFL. But what I think is the big separator between UNC and Pitt is the coaching of Mac Brown. I think that's going to elevate this team above Pittsburgh. And the defense, honestly, should be better than it was last year. It was a pretty atrocious defense. I think that they should be better, and that should help them win some more games. Josh Downs is their key player in my eyes, set the school record for receiving yards last year. I think he's only going to get better as an elite receiver in college football. So I think, Josh Downs, he leads a pretty experienced group of wide receivers for UNC, and he'll look to improve off his 2021 year. Now at number 1, I've got Miami winning this division, and to me this was a pretty easy pick. Now there's, Miami sometimes gets overhyped, absolutely, but to me, with all the NIL happening, massive amounts of money being spent on coaches and everything, Miami, I think, is going to have a bit of a return to glory. I'm not saying they're going to go to the college football playoff or anything, but I think this is a team that in a few years should definitely be competing, to be the king of the ACC with Clemson. And on their schedule, they get Pittsburgh at home is their most important. It is a little bit in. They get Pitt and North Carolina, the 2 big games in the division. They get them at home, which I think is real important. They do have to play at Clemson, which will be tough, and then Florida State, rivalry game, always going to be tough, but they do get them at home this year. So they get Florida State at home. Out of the conference, they get Texas A&M. That's really their only key game out of conference. They went 5-3 in the ACC last year, 7-5 overall. And they did beat Pittsburgh a year ago. They beat the ACC champs. I think they're going to end up winning the ACC Coastal this year. And really, it's the experience. Bringing back the most players in this division, the most key players as well. Tyler Van Dyke, one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. He was the ACC Rookie of the Year a season ago. There was a big... the games he played versus the games like De'Aaron King played, huge difference in Miami's offense. If he had played the whole year, who knows how good this team would have been. Bringing in Mario Cristobal from Oregon, I think is a good move. I think he's going to recruit better than Manny Diaz did and the other coaches at Miami the past few years. I think he's really going to put some new energy, new blood in this team and start, they're already, this isn't helping them this year, but they're already, I'm seeing, winning recruit battles in the state of Florida against, the Gators and Florida State. So if Miami can get back to that, winning these, keeping the best players from the state of Florida, I think, they're obviously going to be a much better team than they have been. And, They're talented on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They have, I think, a good offensive line, real good defensive line. And Cristobal is definitely going to help with the offensive line, being a former offensive lineman himself. They have the most productive quarterback in this division. There's no Kenny Pickett anymore. There's all this energy. There's all this hype with Miami, bringing back the most talent. I just think it's a pretty clear cut for them to win the division. Obviously, Pitt and North Carolina will challenge them, but in my opinion, it's Miami's to lose, and they'll be playing Clemson for the ACC crown. So, with that being said, guys, that's going to wrap up this episode of the College Football Previews. Next week, I'll be talking about the Big Ten and talking about those teams, but until then, guys, remember, be clutch.